Chapter 6, Effective Teacher Family Communication, Types, Barriers, Conferences, and Program. And this family, of course, is a new term, a politically correct term, because after our last chapter, we determined what difference between households and families. If you're in our neighborhood, this family would be parents, but we have a lot of situations now where family is a much safer place to go. But this is one of my favorite ones to teach about, because they do a really nice job going through some of these things. And I'll challenge you and give you some stories of some situations. But the thing that is, most of you have some knowledge or experience of this from when you were growing up, from what your parents said. But let's take a look. Here's the outcomes. What is effective? One way and two way is really interesting. Roadblocks. They do a nice job on that. Describe parents' education programs. This one is a little more distant. And then important characteristics of these conferences themselves. So really well done here. First of all, messages. So let's go look at the textbook and kind of see where we're at here. So first of all, effective communication. What do you have in mind when you think effective communication? Is the transmission of feelings, information, and signals? Is it sending, receiving? Is it verbal exchange? So here it gives a couple scenarios, and I'll let you look at this, couple email things. And then let's go on to this. Messages. Each message has three components: the words, the body language, the gestures, vocal characteristics, the pitch, loudness. So I'm going to make this number one, and that is you address a sentence about each of these, and let me give you a little more before you go to those. So here it starts with this messages. What's compared. Here's the important elements of it. You may want to include. Communication includes this: speaking, listening, reflective, feeling, interpretation of the message, all part of that. And the receiver must correctly interpret the meaning. And this is what happens now in social media, is that we have a hard time getting meaning from it. And that's anytime we have one way instead of face-to-face communication, because communication has so many parts to it besides just text on words. And anytime you put things to text, of course, as you know, people have a chance to pore over it and study it and dissect it versus a verbal communication. But nonetheless, that's what that is. And then miscommunication, I want you to address this with a sentence or two, what it has to do. And then this visual message, easy to assume that people understand it. And then one-way and two-way communication. And what's the difference between those two? And that'll take you through that. So then we'll give you these types here, and this is really interesting. Like one way, let me go over here. One way is very important, allows teacher and parent to convey an easy message, and that's what you like about it. It's easy. Childhood teachers do this. Okay, and here are some types. A simple newsletter, and it gives you this, like class news, things in a newsletter. And here's let me start this right away, saying in this era, for the most part, this is all digital. And let me just have a sidebar here again. One of the things that happened to us in our family is when our kids were in elementary, they went to a small private Christian school. And it really was still stuck, what I call in the 80s, of most of the assumption built that most of the families there, that one of the parents were at home during the day. And so one of my missions from the time we started there was to get them to convert to a digital communication. Because here's what happens. We would get these letters, these communications, and they would give them to the kids, and they would put them in their bag. and it would blend in with the other 50 papers they got every day. And we may or may not see that communication, but certainly more challenging to us, we may, but more likely may not be able to find it back once it got in the pile at home. So our preferred way was always some kind of a digital communication. And there's lots of ways to do that, but this is what is a simple newsletter, and this is what we did in yesteryear. We printed these out, and I know, again, I said before, we can make this thing that not everybody has technology, but I'm saying to you, yes, they do. That now there's all kinds of it. The government now provides cell phones and smartphones for families if they can't afford them based on income. But they give you a nice foundation here. But these same things could be digital. Okay, parent newsletters, as you know. Here's the following for your newsletter. And I'm going to ask you to put that, I think I have that here someplace. Put this next to newsletter, and here's number 2. I'm going to ask you some of these, but it gives you a little thing here for newsletters. And then I'm going to jump over this thing with the different types of a preschool newsletter, an elementary, or if you're going to do a district-wide one. And then we jump to notes and letters, and it gives you some things here you could do with that. And newspapers, maybe, it depends what you're teaching and at what level. We're always happy, where Jackson goes, there's a community newspaper that covers the school beat fairly well. Where my other son at Roosevelt, not as much. You may have a school newspaper that's out, but newspapers are less common than they were. This is more media, internet, email, websites, social media. I would assume today, depending on what school you're at, that you could communicate quite readily with families and social media. The only thing is just make sure they know, and you'll do a great job of that, of letting them know. Television, radios, those types of things. And some of this is above your, when we get to that level, unless you're the administrator. This is an old one that you may think about, a suggestion box. You know what that is? A handbooks. In my experience with handbooks, and when I was in grad school, the old professor was all about having handbook. But every handbook I've ever seen is so cumbersome that no one ever reads them. I can remember one administrator I worked for, that was his thing to all the kids. Hey, it's in the handbook. And the parents had questions. Hey, it's in the handbook. Well, I don't know about that strategy. But these are all things for handbooks, and I'm not going to make you bring those in, or specialized summer handbook notes. So I'm not going to make you do any of those, but that is one-way communication type things. And let me go back here because I want to just look at this with you again, like one-way things. In both school and parents, a number of strategies have to improve. I want to see, there's some place where it here it is. For instance, some child would send a note home. Examples are this. I thought there was a place where it tells you, well, the thing about one-way, obviously, is there's no way for them to communicate back. And then we go to two-way, and then that alleviates it. Well, one-way is important, two-way is essential. Two-way communication. And you can imagine that's impossible only when school personnel meet the children and their family. School principal or center director set a positive climate that values children and their families, will increase the level of engagement. And that's obviously that's so. And then two-way, increased involvement is necessary of true partnership. Telephone calls, emails, home visits, parent visits, all these things. So I want to look at those with you. So first, and again, let me tell you a story about Homework Hotline. When I was teaching in middle school, I went there 25 years ago, and one of the things that we established when I was there is a homework hotline, and it was the greatest technology ever was, because everybody would put their homework up every day. You called in, got on the phone, dialed your number, and told them, went through your subjects, what the assignments were, what pages, what handouts, that. And in a low-income school like we're at, it was, we thought it was wonderful. I don't know what the parents got out of it, but often we could refer them to a homework hotline. Now, this would be considered old technology, and I would like you, we're going to work on this one a little bit. This will be number 3. Sorry. And start there by saying that's old technology. Okay, and then computer things like emails, chats, and that's where you do that. And again, I think here is, you could use websites here also, where people could leave stuff. And of course there's telephone calls. This is suggesting how you would arrange a telephone call. I worked with one teacher that was phenomenal at keeping record of every phone call she made to parents. And with our technology today, you could easily do that also, because you would grab your smartphone, and then you would start like a Google Sheet and have it on your phone, and you would say parent phone calls. And it's just, especially if you're in special ed, but anything, just so you have record of it. And so you would put the date here, and then, who, maybe like this, student, and maybe the number, and then here, issue or outcome, or whatever. So just keep that in mind. I would throw this together, and again, link this on your phone. It doesn't have to be on your computer. You may keep it on your phone also, but maybe you make your phone calls from your computer. If you're in my SPED 465, I show you how to make phone calls from your computer, and maybe that's where you do it, and now you have your hands free, and you log some of this here. But nonetheless, that's what I would do with that. Home visits, interesting. You want to be a little careful with this. I used to have to do this because we were in the pre-cell phone days, and sometimes that was a little scary. But you want to talk about how you would connect with families. This would be one way if you make a home visit. Reach parents with no telephone. And I say now that's old, because in our culture today, and not that you couldn't run into somebody that doesn't have a phone, but it would be somewhat unusual for the most part, depending where you're at. We're going to skip over this. It's just a video about effective home visits. So you come back to that if that's you someday. And then these here, I'm going to just turn those over to you. And I would like you to just give a sentence or two about each of these, why they would be possible, and rather than spend a lot of time here. The only thing, this one of the things when I was the room parent, we did at least 3 or 4 times a year is made a breakfast, and it wasn't for families, for the kids. But oh my gosh, with effect, they loved it. The teachers loved it. I loved doing it. I'd bring my griddle and put on my chef's hat and mix up the pancakes right there in class, and fry pancakes and stuff like that. Really quite simple and quick, and it just was a thing that we all look forward to. And this one's about for parents, and again, how hard would that be to whip up some pancakes and invite people? And it's a good way to possibly to connect them. You've got to be careful of your times, of course, because most of us are racing to work. So if we're going to have breakfast, you got to allow us time. But it'd be a great community builder, a great relationship builder. So roadblocks. And this is probably a more important part here than even the communication thing, is what are some of the roadblocks? that we put up and that families put up. So let's look at this. Roadblocks can impede the communication process between families. 12 roadblocks here, and that's a link is right here. I'll link it in your notes for you, but I would like you to make this number 4, and that is you list those 12 roadblocks that are in this video. Okay. So here are some parent roadblocks that go with this: difference in language, culture, beliefs, and opinions, and those could be, but less. They're going to talk a little bit about interpreters, those types of things. And this is what's the normal way to communicate. It may be different than yours and mine, but I still think ultimately the big thing will be, are you approachable? And I'm going to ask you to put this right now here after these, and this will be our number 5, and I'm going to ask you a couple times, and that is this. You've heard me say it before. Time is always a factor. Number 5, and make this big and bold and red, and this will be the biggest roadblock for you in your duties is time. Time is always a factor, and I felt that once our kids went to the big schools, how much less accessible teachers were than they were when we went to a small school. And so you just, if you're aware of this, starting out, that time is always a factor. And Dr. Rojas doesn't really hit that, but I'm telling you, time will be a factor. So what are those characteristics that hinder communication? And this will be number 5. And don't start on this until I'm going to ask you to say something about each of those. My own and my child's guardian role, and I don't belong role, the avoidance role, the indifferent parent role, don't make waves role, the club waving role. So you'll connect, you'll understand all those once you look through these. But this is parents, and it'll just give you some insight as to why maybe parents kind of how we did before about parents volunteering. Some of those same things now carry over here. The last chapter we talked about, why people aren't volunteering. This comes a little bit farther. What is that? The role? What is the barriers that the parents have, and what can you do about it? Okay, so that will be here of. Here. And now here's the school roadblocks. Here's the things we do. And let's just be careful that we're aware of them. First of all, this authority figure thing that we use over them, or the sympathizing counselor, or here's a one that's more common, pass the buck. That's the principal, or that's the guidance counselor, or that's the PE teacher. That's somebody else. That's nothing me. And then protect the empire, meaning you're too young to understand this, or too inexperienced to understand this. But part of that is what we call the old school is the company line, that we never admit that the school is responsible for anything. And so no matter what the issue is, no, it's not the school. We're protecting, protect the empire is Dr. Ross's term. My term is we carry the company line. And then I'm too busy. And it goes back to what I was saying before, that time is always a factor. So one of the things that we say to parents is, I don't have time for that. Or if there's time, I'll do that. And so this will be number 6, is you will have a little redress on each of these so that you remember them, that you understand here's the parent roadblocks, and here's what we do as school to block that communication. And then, of course, Dr. Rojas communicating with culturally and linguistic diverse families, and I give you that here. Learners funds of knowledge about the culture and different, recruit parents who speak different languages, and this I think should be the school. should help you with that. But if you're going to rely on this only for conferences, for that kind of communication, what you want to be able to do, and again, you may be able to teach parents, but now we have the technology, especially in Google, to translate. So if you're doing digital stuff, their computer can translate into their language. And then, of course, do things that attract family events, that attract families, and it goes back to maybe our pancake our type thing here in breakfast here. That would be a fun thing that would attract even people of different linguistic diverse families. So let's look at this effective communication with parents. Starts with effective leadership, and often that is a district-wide approach and attitude. Recognize the order of children's school experience to be successful. Parents must be informed and involved, and you know that. Teachers talk to parents in many ways. Their words, their body actions, their manner of speaking. And all that, as we talked about before, is communication, and nonverbal is important. So here is effective communication skills. And that comes from right here. And there's 12 of them here. And I'm going to just ask you to address each of these. And so that comes from here. This will be number 7. And that is you make a comment or something so you remember these. And they come from right here. They're good communicators that do these things. They show respect. They give their total attention. Culture appropriate communications. And you can read this also. But of course what I'm debating here is if I should clip that. I think that's what I'll do. I'm going to have you do this. But I'm also going to clip this and have it that for your website for future. So here, just hang on a second. I'm going to clip this for you. How about that? I better put the chapter here also, or I will lose it. So that one, I think it doesn't like this one. Okay, and this. Parents become good partners in the educational process when they do the following. And I have that one too, but you don't have to do this one. But I think I'm going to clip this also. Leave this here in your notes and look at this. But I'm going to clip this for you to put also in on your website as part of your project here. And I'm just going to call it this. And you may want to use this when you're communicating and put this on your website or use it for when you're getting ready for conferences, whichever. View the teacher as a source of support, listen carefully and give total commitment, show respect. Here's the ultimate one. Become ally with the teacher as get out of that. And same with here. Become allies with the parents. Work in harmony since the goal is the partnership as the child. So ultimately that's the outcome of both of those. And now you have them to put on your website. And then we're going to jump over here. Some more things like positive speaking and listening. This will be number 8. And I'm going to ask you to address positive speaking and listening, which is right here. These 7 things: be receptive, be patient, use silence, seek agreement, avoid ambiguity, remove distractions, be patient. And there you have those right there. And then open response, close response, what are those things? Here's those characteristics of good listeners. I think I'm going to give you that also. And I want you to put this in your notes right here. Point 1. It didn't like that. Okay, so it won't let me do that, so I'm going to have to clip it. I was hoping it would let me take that. So now so we have that, and I want that in your notes. Okay, and then reflective listening, and here, like I say, this will be number 9 here. And again, just a one sentence thing that responds to those things from here, and a lot will be pretty self-explanatory. You can bring these in, and these if you like. Those are easy. This rephrasing, reframing. How about this? Reframe a problem. You know what? This will be for your website, and I'm going to call this reframing. Yeah, it's the same. So let's just go like this again, and you're going to get this. And if my plan again is for the future, that you have something to remind you. I need an R there, reframing. Okay. All right. Well, let's. This is a quick look here. These parent education programs. I'm not familiar with this. Let me do this. Here's what I'm thinking. There is again. You know what? I think there's only one question on the test or two about this. So I'm going to just say this is up to you. You don't have to address that here if you like. I've heard of active parenting, but it's there used to be a whole chapter on this, on parent programs, or the chapter has been cut down. So I'm going to just jump over that here and get into something more here. This parent-teacher conferences. Okay, so let's look at what that is. Is a collaborative effort to coordinate the best possible effort to educate a child in the classroom. It's a time for listening and sharing on part of the school staff and parents. So I'm going to highlight listening and sharing. And again, my experience with this, especially when we got to the big school, at time was a factor. That was we literally had one teacher that sat the timer, which started at 15 minutes when we sat down. So the mantra being, so we didn't take somebody else's time. So you always felt like you had that over you. Between home and school, greatest benefit of the school, conference needs, continue to communicate, school with positive exchange. So can I say this about conferences? Hopefully the first communication you have with parents isn't the conference, that you've had something, like we talked last chapter, you've done something at the beginning of the year, you've had some face-to-face with that family prior to this. And the only thing worse, and again, folks, I had to learn this the hard way. Please don't let be the first communication you have with a family is to let them know there's a problem, a behavior problem or something. You want to create that relationship before that. And same with this. You want this to be more relaxed, and you have such a short time. For the most part, you get these kids for 1 year. So to make this effective, you've got to create relationships to do that. With a positive interchange between the teacher and the early telephone or call or block walk, and that's what they're suggesting here, are personal opportunities for two-way communication between parent and teacher, or three-way if you've got students involved. And it would not be unusual to have somebody along to interpret if their language is an issue. It would be not in, it could be several parents. It could be a support person if you're in a school where families aren't as traditional. But nonetheless, you put your best foot forward, and hopefully they do. Conferences are the most common form of communication between families and teachers. Okay. And then here's a kind of a collaborative conversation, and I want you to bring this, I think this is the one. Invite, select a mutual, relate, restate the goal. Oh, it's missing this one, I think. I think this one goes in here. Okay, develop trust, invite, set a mutual goal. Listen to all viewpoints and understanding, restate the goal. Okay, we got that. So this will be number 10, and that is you'll touch on each of these as to what they mean. Okay, a collaborative conversation, and then invitation and schedules. And I'm going to ask you to do that as part of your project, is to make these invitations and stuff. But nonetheless, number 11 is you talk about each of these: a comfortable meeting place, two-way communication, understandable language, and then you can practice those. Understand the language, practice, and it takes you through that there, and you may want to include those in your things there. And then we get into this. What do we do to prepare for those conferences? What did I say? This is number 11, and this will be number 12 when we touch each of those things. Preparation for it, 2 types of this, involves training and teachers of this, pre-conference workshops and guides. Now, again, I'm going to, you bring some of this in about pre-conference workshops and guides, but I'm going to clip some of this so that you have it for your website, and you may want to include this in your communication. So here's big ones that I connect. Questions and conference guides should be those school would like answered, and also ones that parents may be interested in knowing. So here's the kind of things that you would remind parents. These are the things I may ask you in a conference. And this, as a parent, I would like this information. I'm going to clip that up there also and say chapter 6. We may ask parents, and again I say as a parent, I go, oh yeah, I can answer those. I learned this with the IEP meeting, how to do that. And then here's another one that I'm going to clip, and that'll go on your website, and that. Current concerns, And then this. Parents might want to ask the teacher what you might want to ask me. And I guarantee you will loosen up the thing a little bit if they can anticipate. Okay, what you may want to ask the teacher. And you may want to rewrite these or something, but I guarantee you'll get some mileage out of those. And then this teacher preparation, again, we're still here on this teacher thing. The teacher preparation is this. How about a conference checklist? I'm going to give you that also. For your website, and you're just going to stack these all up so that you have them to review when you get ready to prepare for your conferences. Really well done here, and make arrangements for coffee, tea, have clear objectives. If you have student-led conferences, this. And then here again, I'm going to ask you to continue on these to prepare for the conference membership, student-led, student-parent-teacher conferences, all these things here. Here's some situations that may be helpful you to read through. Here's some pre-conference prep, day of the conference, state clear objectives. The parent as part of the team, that comes right here. And that's ready to go here. That's up there again, a team member. And then this down here, I think I'm going to give you this also. Parent is part of the team. I might have to shrink just a little here, because I want you to have all that. I'm going to clip this, and again, this is for your website to remind you. Okay. There you have that. And then you have some concrete example of child's work. And again, I'm asking you to write something about each of these here. Post-conference plans. Working with angry parents. I think I'm going to clip that whole thing for you, because I think everybody needs to be prepared. And let's hope that we don't have that to deal with. But if you do, and that's for your website also, but I want you to address some of that here, working with angry parents. Where were we? Number 12, and so that one's good. But number 13, you're going to give me one line about each of these. And then again, it gives you a situation that might be helpful to you. And then making a contract, what that has to do with. And then facilitating communication throughout the year. I'm going to clip this, and this will just go. I'm going to ask you to just bring that in. And you're going to put that right here. This will be number 14. Okay, and then the last thing I want you to put here again at the end, behind everything else, time is always a factor. Okay. All right, that was chapter 6.